All right, today we finished the t-shirt for the doll. Look how well it turned out. It's got Velcro back fastening on the back. You've got a hem. You've got all the details. I love this little shirt. I think it turned out great. Stay tuned and see how easy it is to put it together. All right, we're starting at the ironing board today because our first step is going to be to hem our sleeves. So I've got our sleeve pieces here, and we are going to, remember we made these out of the t-shirt so they are right sides out. So I'm going to open them up so we have wrong sides up. Very carefully so that we still keep a right and a left. Double notch here, double notch here. That makes me sure that I have reverse pieces. Now I'm going to press them nice and flat. They've been on the pattern piece for a few days. They need to be pressed out. Now the pattern calls for a 3/4 inch seam, 3/4 inch hem. I'm actually going to use a 5/8 inch. Couple of reasons. That way my sleeves will be a little bit longer, and it's a little easier to measure on my measuring thing here. It's not something that's set in stone. You can, within a little bit, you can adjust your hems. That in there. Now remember, this metal is going to be extremely hot. And on this pattern, we're not folding a double hem. We're just making a single layer hem. We do the same thing on this one, and then I'll meet you at the sewing machine. All right, I have my fabric, our hem is folded up. Went a little more than a 1/4 inch, so I've lined my fabric up with the side of the presser foot, not with our tape, and that way I can be a little closer to where I want my seam to be. And I'm just going to do one row of stitching. I'm going to show you a little trick here at the end that I like to do when I'm doing lots of seams like this, where I'm doing the same thing over and over on separate pieces of fabric. Right to the end. Now we don't need to back stitch or anything on these. I'm going to take my second sleeve, I'm going to butt it up right against that one, and sew from one to the other. That serves the same purpose as having our little piece of scrap fabric there. It keeps the sewing machine from eating the fabric. It just makes it a little easier to get everything to come out nice. Now don't stretch your fabric as you do this. You just want it to go very slowly and very gently. And I've got my machine, since mine has a slider for speed, I've got mine in kind of a middle position. So it's not going super slow, but it's not going fast either. It's just cruising along here. All right, let's cut the thread. Let's bring this out, and now we can just clip between the two. And clip between there, and now our sleeves are hemmed. Now what I will probably do, since I've got this a little bit further, I've got a little more space there, I don't want all that loose fabric, so I'm going to fold it like this. I'm going to do one on camera and then I'll do the other off camera, but I'm going to very carefully, making sure I'm not catching the sleeve, just that extra hem, the kind of seam allowance past the hem, and trim this up. That way it'll look a little nicer on the inside. All right, I'm going to do that with this one, and then I'll be back. All right, so I've got the t-shirt as we sewed it last week, and I've got our two sleeve pieces. So we need to sew right sides together, and that means we need to figure out which sleeve goes on which side. So let's first lay it out so it's laying both right sides up. The front of my shirt is here and the front of my sleeve is here. I know this is the back of my sleeve because it has 2 notches, and so does the back of my shirt. So I'm going to flip this up. Now, try and get this where you guys can see and I can see. So we've got that shoulder seam that we did, and we press that open. So I'm going to open it back up. I'm going to line up this little notch, little clip I made with the shoulder seam. And now that's in position. Now, we're going to take this notch and we're going to line the notches up. The notch on the sleeve and the notch on the shirt front. And then we're going to line up our edges. And we're going to go at the back. And now we're going to line up that double notch. Make sure it's all lined up and nice and straight. And then a couple of pins in between, probably one here. And one here. Now those line up really nicely. So normally I would go ahead and pin the other sleeve, but I think since we've got the camera right here, I'm just going to move my machine forward again, move it into place. And now since there's more going on this side, well, I pinned it more for this side, so I'll go ahead and do this one. You can have whichever side up is more comfortable for you. Now remember, we need our 1/4 inch seam allowance, so we need to have this on here. I don't want it to eat my fabric. If you haven't seen last week's video, you want to go back and watch that before you start trying to sew, because I give you a lot of information there. Now we are going to cross this seam again when we do the side seam, so I'm not going to do any back stitching or anything there. Now I'm watching my notch and making sure that I have cleared the notch. The notch is completely in the seam allowance. Everything is flat. It can be bunched up past the seam, but it has to be flat where we're sewing. What's going on? Okay, that's fine. And I'm using my fingers to make sure everything feels right. Everything feels like it's where it's supposed to be on the other side. It would be nice to be able to see both sides of the fabric at once, wouldn't it? Okay, I don't like how that fold is coming up there, so I'm going to do that. Got a little bit of fabric that was trying to fold up there. Sure when you go past the notch that you are getting the whole notch in the seam allowance. If you need to scooch over just a thread or so, go ahead and do that, just so you get the end of that notch caught. And now my fabric is trying to fold under there, so I have to straighten back out. And there we go. And my thread is having a problem, so I'm going to have to rethread my machine after I get done here. I am going to go get the other sleeve done, and then I'll meet you at the ironing board. Alright, both sleeves are sewn in, so now we are going to, you guessed it, press as sewn. When you get into these smaller spaces, it's a little more challenging. And then, well, let's get both of them done. Then the next step is we press the seam allowance towards the sleeve. turn it over, and we press from the right side. And we have a sleeve inserted. So I'm going to turn the camera off, I'm going to press the other side, and then we'll do the side seams and the hem, and then we'll just have the Velcro to do. All right, now we are going to pin our underarm seam, and the underarm seam is going to go all the way from the hem all the way to where the hem will be on the shirt. So the first thing I'm going to do is pin this, matching up my edges. That and this underarm seam are the two most important spots to match. That's where it'll all show. So make sure that you pin that really well. Then pin the notch. Then go down here and pin. Because we haven't hemmed the bottom yet, the bottom edges, if they don't match perfectly, that's fine. It won't show. If that hemmed sleeve doesn't match, that will show. And they match up pretty well. So I'm going to turn the camera off, I'm going to pin the other side seam, and then we'll sew it together. All right, now we are going to always start on the place that's most important. So in this case, that would be where the sleeve hem is. So once again, I've sewn off the edge of there. I'm going to go in a few stitches, take my pin out, and now I'm going to anchor my stitches. There. Because we won't be crossing that again with more stitching. Feel that the fabric is trying to fold there. Make sure that you're feeling underneath, you're feeling through both layers of fabric, and you should be able to tell if it's trying to fold. It'll feel thicker if it's folding underneath. Now I'm going to sew as close to that pin as I can without hitting it. Take the pin out. Now I'm going to go forward just until I hit the seam. Now a little bit further. Not quite there yet. I'm going to be a little bit past the seam, I guess, actually, because I need to rotate when I turn the machine so I can make a nice crisp corner there at the underarm. Get the pin out of the way. So have you started sewing your t-shirt yet for your doll? Or are you going to wait until I get all done and then do it? I hope you're picking up some hints and tips. Even if you've sewed before, I hope I'm giving you some tips that maybe you haven't used before, or maybe you didn't know about. And again, be sure you ask questions if you have any. Now I'm not going to bother doing an anchor stitch at the bottom because when I hem, I'm going to sew across this seam. So off camera, I'm going to do the other side, and then I'll meet you at the iron. All right, we've got this all sewn. I'm going to press it as sewn again. We're almost done with this. This is pretty cool. All right, so I'm going to press that up. There we go. Now, you can't really press the underarm seam, but you can press the side seam a little bit. I'm going to press it open. You can choose how you want to press yours. It's up to you. Let's turn this all right side out and see how I did on matching my seams underneath the arm. That one turned out perfect. And this one, let's see, am I perfect? Pretty close. It's off by just a tiny bit, but that's okay. Now, we are going to fold up a hem, just like we did on the sleeves. So I'll get it started, and then I'm going to turn the camera off and go ahead and finish it. So I'm going to fold it up 5/8 of an inch. simply because that's a good length. It'll be fine. If you don't have one of these hem gauges, you can just measure and do it that way. And that is really warm, so I'm being really careful. And I am going to there. Now let's go to the sewing machine and sew that seam. All right, since we are done with our 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm going to take this off because I don't need that in my way anymore. And we are going to sew this. And now I'm going to line it up a little bit further over. There's a little line on my sewing machine that I'm lining up with. That way I'll have a little bit wider hem, wider area past the stitching than I have on my sleeves, which I like that look. Oops, I think I just knocked the camera, sorry about that. After I get this done, before we finish the back off, I think we'll try it on the doll and see how it fits. Well, I'm going to turn the camera off because I'm not even halfway yet. And when I get this sewn, we'll try it on the doll. All right, now I've got this t-shirt. Obviously we haven't got the back finished yet, but this is going to be really cute. It's got the oversized shoulders like this style shirt always has. I think that turned out really cute. So our next step will be to put the finish the back and put the Velcro on. So let's go get that done. All right, so I picked up some Velcro to use to fasten our doll top in the back. And this has already been opened because this is take 2 of this portion of the video because I totally messed it up last time. So Velcro, first let's talk about Velcro. Velcro is kind of a hot topic in the doll clothes area. Some people hate it, some people love it. There are pros and cons to Velcro. Because of its very nature, Velcro sticks together, but it also sticks to everything else. Pros that caused by that. It's easy to fasten the back of your garments closed on your doll. Whether you're an adult or a kid, it's pretty easy to get the back put together. It doesn't have to be precisely lined up. It's quick and easy to put into your garment. And it's just an easy out, I guess. I don't mind Velcro. I will say that first. Now, the cons. Because it sticks to everything. If the back of that shirt is left open and it's thrown in a bin with a bunch of other doll clothes, or it's going to catch onto everything. It's going to all tangle together. Or worse yet, if it's thrown in with your dolls, the Velcro, the hook side could catch the fabric of the doll that the doll body is made of. It could catch the hair. So you have to be careful. So like I said, pros and cons. If you are going to launder the doll clothes, make sure that the garment is closed, that Velcro is closed up so it doesn't catch on everything else in the load. So, also, when you see it on the pattern, it's going to call for hook and loop tape. That's the generic name of the brand name Velcro. Other companies make this stuff. And there's an off-brand that I prefer. I don't know what the name of it is. I just know the packaging. And I couldn't find it. So I got regular Velcro. Now, I'm going to bring you down close because I want you to see something very, very important. Now, my preference is a soft and flexible Velcro. it's a little more forgiving. It looks better. But sew on, the word sew on. A lot of Velcro is a self-stick, meaning it has a gluey, sticky substance on the back of it to make it stick. You can't sew through that, and I don't like to use that on clothing. Even the fabric one, I don't like. I prefer to sew it on, that way I know it's on where I want it, and I can move it until I get it sewn on. So let's look at the instructions on the pattern, because they can be a little bit confusing if you're not completely, if you haven't really read your instruction sheet very well. So we get to the last step on our top we're making, and it says hem the lower edge of the top. Okay, we did that. Finish back opening, and then it goes on to the optional steps. See how that's in bold? That's a much more dark lettering. It's because the back opening instructions are on this first page along with the cutting guides. It's right here. It talks about hems, it talks about back opening. So that's where those instructions are. I am going to show you how to do this, but I'm not going to actually cut anymore because I've already cut this. So you're going to measure your Velcro to the length of your back open, of your whatever the opening is. So I would cut this right here. So it's about the same length as this. And then I take my scissors and I cut it this way so that I end up with 2 sets. Because my opinion is this is way too wide for a doll top. It doesn't need to be, this is 5/8 inch. I couldn't even get, they called for 1/2 inch. Even 1/2 inch is too wide. It's too heavy, it's too stiff, it's too much Velcro. So I cut the two strips apart, and then I put the extra set together. Those will just go back in here, and I'll have an extra set for next time. So what do we do now? Well, we're going to line up the straight edge of this with the center back line of our top. So let's get our pattern out, and we're going to put a pin. Because remember, we kind of marked it, but that marking is now lost in the hem. That's okay. I mean, we could look at our hem and see where it's at, but this is just as easy. We're going to put a pin there. Our center back line is this dotted sewing line there. Put this here, and we're going to put this here. Then we're going to go to the other side, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to line this up, line the cut edge against the cut edge of the fabric against the cut edge of the pattern piece, and just put a pin in. Oops, that's crooked. And put a pin in over here. Super easy to do. Make sure I'm under the camera for at least part of this so you guys can see. All right, now we want to make sure we get the right sides of the Velcro where we want them. This sticky part, the stickery part, the stiffer part, we want that to face away from the doll body towards the other side of the fabric. So that one, make sure I'm getting it right, goes on this side. So I'm going to line up the edge of that to the edge of that. I'm going to pin it down here. And I don't make it quite the length of the pack. I don't think it needs to be that long, quite frankly. All right. I apologize for any noise you're hearing from outside. It sounds like somebody's getting out of a car right next to my window. My apartment is right next to the parking lot, and I'm sitting right in front of the window that looks out to the parking lot. Let's see if I can. This is a little stiff, so it's a little hard to get the pin through sometimes. Don't worry about that. You can do it. And then here. And now we've got that one lined up with our fold line. See if I can get this on here. There. Now, we're going to do the same thing over on this side. This is the soft piece. Line the edge up with that pin. Try not to poke, do your best to not poke your fingers with your pins, because this is resisting a little bit, so you have to push a little harder with your pin, and that's when you're more apt to poke yourself with the pin than just normal pinning. Remember, these things are sharp, and they will hurt when they poke you. All right, let's move over to the sewing machine, and we'll get started putting this on. All right, one thing I didn't mention is I am varying slightly from the instructions for how to put this on, because I'm adding a step on the first piece of Velcro. I always get the soft side put in first because it's the easiest. I'm adding this step that I'm doing now, which is, I've set my machine to a zigzag, which is the back and forth stitch, and just the normal zigzag that the machine comes up with when you first put it on. And I'm going to kind of center that Velcro, my pin in until I actually make contact. Oops, where's my foot pedal from my machine? I haven't sewn for a while, so my machine, everything got put away. Now I'm very carefully watching that I don't hit that pin. There, now I'm in the Velcro. Now don't tug at all, let the machine feed through. This basically, all this step that I'm doing now is doing, it's just going to hold the Velcro still. I prefer to do this and then fold and do my more top stitching type stitching on the other side. This way everything is anchored really well. I'm going to leave this pin here. Right, and you don't even need to do a knot stitch on there. All right, now I'm going to cut the extra threads off. And now I'm going to switch us back to our knit stitch that we have been using. I'm going to fold my fabric on that, remember that center fold line, center back line that we just came up with? I'm folding my fabric right at that point, and I'm sorry I'm doing this off camera, but I couldn't do it where the camera could see it. All right, so I've got that all folded over nicely and pinned, and I'm going to start. And I can tell this is right over there, so let me see, how wide is that? You notice I don't have my masking tape on anymore for our 1/4 inch seam because we don't need it anymore. We're not doing a 1/4 inch seam anymore. There we go. All right, now, actually I'm going to do this one first. I'm going to go down the outside edge. So I've got my stitches lined up. You'll see I've got, oops, no you won't see because I've got stuff in the way. I've got the edge of my fabric lined up with this part of my machine foot. That way I can keep a straight edge, I can keep an eye on that point, and I can go straight. It gives me a guide to sew against. Make sure you're staying folded nicely. I'm going to take that pin out. And I will do an anchor stitch there. No threads. And now we've got a nice straight line of stitching right along the edge. Now, I'm going to make it look a little bit nicer by going back to the top. I forgot to bring my little chunk of, let me see, I've got a piece of fabric here. Don't want that to accidentally eat up my fabric. So let's do this. This way I know that it won't pull it down on the feed dogs. Alright, now I'm going to line my last row of stitching up with that edge of my foot. And this may not hit the Velcro fold, the part that's folded over all the way down. That's all right. That's why we did the other stitching. And you could pick a different point to line your foot up with. Just make sure you've got it lined up with something so everything stays straight. All right. I'm going to take it off camera. I'm going to trim all my threads off. Now we have two very nice rows of stitching that are holding our Velcro down, and it's all held straight. Now, I did manage to pin this wrong direction, so I should have pinned it with my pin heads going the other way on the back. So I'm going to fix that really quick. Now, expect when you are sewing the prickly side of the Velcro down, you can pretty much guarantee that you are going to break your thread at least once. It just kind of does that. And the back we only have to sew once, and I like to use a zigzag stitch for this. That way it holds it flat. So I'm going to take my machine back to a zigzag, just the one that sets up on my machine when it comes up. I don't have to start all the way at the hem because my Velcro doesn't quite go there. So I'm starting at the bottom of my Velcro, and I'm going to get it onto the Velcro, and then I'm going to secure my thread. All right, now take it very slow. In fact, I'm going to switch to a slow speed. If you go slow and you go carefully, we might avoid breaking the thread. We'll see. If you break the thread, it's easy. You just rethread your machine, start just a few stitches before where it broke, and continue going. Come to a stop and take my pin out. Fabric up in your way. Sorry about that. I'm hoping that this angle is working for you guys to see. If you have any other suggestions, let me know. But you see how slow I'm going. That is helping it to not get caught. What happens sometimes is your thread actually catches on the Velcro, on this half of the Velcro, and that's what breaks your thread. And I am kind of pulling just gently on the back side of this, just to keep it moving, because again, the Velcro does tend to cause it to stop. Oops. Now I'm going to take this pin out. Now I'm going to anchor the thread, which goes, my machine goes backwards and then forwards to do that. thread. And we are done. So let me turn the camera off, let me put you back on the tripod, and we'll look at our shirt. All right, so we have our Velcro in. Our shirt is finished. Next week we are going to decorate the front of the shirt. I'm playing around with a couple of ideas. Let me get the doll over here. It's not just fasten the shirt shut. Let's put it on her. Let me back you up just a little bit. You can see all the mess on my table. I'm going to have to make this quickly because my battery appears to be almost dead. But there we go. Pull her hair out of the way. And there we go. White level. There we go. She is done. That's how the shirt fits. So, like I said, next week we will decorate the front. I hope that you've learned some things on this. Be sure and ask any questions. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, be sure and do that, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.